This is the Victims and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit dedicated to educating and engaging mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. On this special crossover holiday episode with our good friends over at Collateral-Cinema, we'll be talking about the movie Fatman, seasonal depression, holidays, pressure, and much more. Ash and Bo from Collateral-Cinema, how you guys doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so these guys... Sorry, go ahead.
It's always good to be here. I mean, we love the show and everything, and we just had you on our show recently, and that was a lot of fun. So here we are.
It's crossover. This is a Christmas crossover, and like we said in you guys' episode for Silent Night, Deadly Night, go check it out. We'll provide links in the show notes, but this is a Christmas tradition that we just made this year. So I'm excited to see what many more crossovers bring.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have some interesting movies planned for future seasons. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it. How about you, Ash?
Hell yeah. I'm just really happy to be collabing and to be just spreading the joy of movies and the holidays and pop culture.
So someone comes to our show and they're like, you know what? I've never heard of Collateral-Cinema or Collateral Gaming. And how would you describe it? What is this show? Give us our listeners a quick rundown on these two shows that you guys have.
Well, with Collateral-Cinema, it's generally film analysis. That's what we do. It's not so much like film criticism. We just kind of break movies down. We break them down by dialogue, the acting, the script. We also talk about fun facts about the movie, and we just kind of try to break things down and dive into the nuts and bolts of specific movies. Like we choose a movie for every episode, and we just focus on that movie, and we break it down and whatnot. So, I mean, and the short answer to all of that is that we're pretty much just three jackasses talking about movies, you know, talking about shit that we have no real knowledge about. No, I'm just playing. But yeah, we have a lot of fun with what we do, and then we try to keep ourselves researched and everything and in the know. So yeah, check out our show.
That's pretty apt. I mean, that's exactly what we do. We try to dig into movies and we compare it with other things that we've seen. And we discuss the cinematography and the writing and just everything that comes to mind. And we also go on a lot of tangents.
Yeah, tangents are totally our thing, like 100%. Expect many of them per episode.
And, Collateral Gaming is basically the exact same thing, but with video games. So if you take everything that Bo and I just said and just replace movies with video games, that's Collateral Gaming. And we run together. We try to run on kind of a staggered schedule so that we've always got content out once a week in some way or another.
Yeah, and we recently did a collaboration on Mortal Kombat. We do that from time to time between the two podcasts, so...
Yeah, we'll find like films that are adapted from video games, or we haven't really done much on the video game side, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mortal Kombat, we are finally getting a new one next April, releasing in theaters and HBO Max simultaneously. I think it's April 17th or 10th, one of the two. But you guys be sure, because we will be covering that movie. That is a Victims and Villains, I guarantee.
Oh, so, hell yeah.
So in April then? I hadn't heard that there was a date, because originally it was planned for January, and we were actually going to do an episode on it. And that's why we did the Mortal Kombat episode, the classic, and we were going to do that in December and then do the new one in January. And it was going to be a huge crossover. We were also going to be talking about Mortal Kombat 11 on the Collateral Gaming side, and I just had to cancel all of that because I just found out that the movie was delayed. But if it's coming out in April, I mean...
Yeah, it's like either earlier or mid-April. I'd have to double check and look. But yeah, they just announced it, I want to say, either earlier today or late last night. It's still relatively new as of this recording.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, we'll definitely get to that movie as soon as we can, and maybe we can even help you out on your episode on your end. Who knows?
Let's do it, guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But speaking of interesting things, this is a interesting movie that we're here talking about. This is Mel Gibson, Walter Goggins in this pseudo grounded yet somehow fantastical Christmas revenge thriller that is Fatman. And man, I have so much to say about this movie. But Bo, I'm gonna let you go first, man. What are your semi-general thoughts on this movie?
First things first, I just love the premise of the movie. Like, not only taking a more realistic approach to Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus and the elves and the reindeer and everything, taking a more realistic approach, but I mean, even taking those fantastical elements and grounding them in a little bit of reality. I mean, even though we don't really get a lot of explanation as to how everything works. I mean, we get some breakdown as to how the factory works, but I thought that was really, really compelling. And also just the whole revenge plot was interesting as well. I mean, just the thought of a kid taking out a hit on Santa. I don't know why that hasn't been done yet. I mean, that's a great premise for a movie. I mean, it has an 80s movie written all over it. I'm surprised it didn't happen back then.
And that's just fresh. I mean, you literally just finished the movie, right?
Yeah, I literally finished it maybe about 10, 15 minutes ago.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really my initial thoughts on this movie. I really liked it. It was entertaining. I mean, it's not absolutely perfect, but I mean, I really like what's going on with it. It's an original take on familiar characters.
I love so much of this movie. I think that you summed it up perfectly in talking about like the narrative and like the acting and just kind of like how each one of these arcs kind of coexist, independent of one another, and then they all just slowly start to like merge towards like one lane as the film progresses. And like Mel Gibson, if you would have told me this time last year, like Mel Gibson is the Santa Claus you need in your Christmas movie, I would have laughed at you because I never thought that anyone could top Kurt Russell.
Man.
But Mel Gibson's just like digging the grave. He's just like, hold my beer. I got this.
He's a much more cynical Santa Claus. That's what I love
Yes.
about it. I mean, it's so obvious that he's been doing this long enough that it's just a job to him. Like I love the scene where he's about to go out on his yearly sleigh ride on Christmas Eve, and it's very quaint. His wife has a thermos of hot chocolate for him and everything. He's just getting ready. I mean, it just looks like any other dad or grandpa getting ready for their job. And I mean, that was really, really interesting to see.
It feels more like a trucker getting ready to leave for his shift.
Exactly. A trucker.
Ice road truckers.
Or a fucking warehouse worker or something like that,
Yeah. Ash, what did you think about this movie, man?
Well, I think Mel Gibson as Santa Claus is right at the center of my thoughts on this movie because, like you, I didn't know what I was missing until I had it. And man, it is just a very, very interesting portrayal. I like the fact that the movie is kind of a gritty, more realistic take on Santa, while at the same time maintaining a lot of those supernatural elements throughout.
Yeah.
And so I came into this knowing absolutely nothing about it. I just watched this the other day, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I was pleasantly surprised.
I will say this. If there's one Santa to rule them all, I would have to say it's the Santa from Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. That's the greatest Santa of all time, and I will die on that hill 100%. But yeah, Mel Gibson's Santa Claus comes very, very close.
It's
like I remember just seeing a image of Santa Claus, and it's actually the one that Ash has behind him as his background. It's just Santa with the gun. I was like, what is this?
Uh-huh.
And just like not reading any plot summary about it, but just like watching the slow release date of like when I could actually see it. And I went into it as about as blind as possible, and I finished. And my wife's not the hugest fan of these kinds of movies, and we both kind of looked at each other after this ended, and we're like, this is a regular Christmas movie for us moving forward, right? And she just like, yeah, this is a pretty awesome movie.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Christmas movie that everyone needs in their queue, period. Like, I mean, I just love the action in it, and I love the representation of Santa as a character. I mean, it's just so awesome. Like I said, not the greatest thing ever, but just the performances are what carry it. And yeah, Mel Gibson is a huge part of that.
And can we admit that this kind of feels like the perfect Christmas movie for 2020 and like our like modern age, the way that, especially where you have kind of these Chris Kringle, as Santa's referred to in this movie, is like his business is declining because like kids are like starting to be more and more like naughty and kind of like going up against like the not being good, so like he's losing business because of it. And it just kind of seems like this feels like a modern movie, is so much so with where you have like raises of like depression and like cyberbullying like raising, and like everyone just kind of seems like their opinions are like facts and like only thing that matters, and like Billy just kind of seems like represent those to like a perfect degree.
Yeah. I see a lot of criticisms of capitalism and consumerism here as well.
Absolutely.
Mainly in the cynicism with Santa, and also the whole angle with the military contract that he is forced to take. I mean, I also love the idea of him getting a government subsidy to do what he does.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You know,
That's what I mean.
That's
what I mean. Whenever
it's just such a juggernaut when it comes to consumerism and everything, that, you know, it makes sense that having Santa delivering presents would be such a massive boon for retailers and whatnot. So, I mean, that was something that I thought was very interesting and even satirical, even.
Yeah, that's what I mean whenever like and I say that there is this realistic component to it, because I like how they go out of their way to explain that Santa has this government contract and that the United States government has a vested interest in his occupation. And yeah, I think because it encourages, like you said, consumerism, and it's very, very American in that aspect. And so I'm watching this for a bit, and I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to try to explain Santa in a way that would make it work in the modern world, and maybe the fantastical image of Santa Claus as we know it doesn't exist. And then all of a sudden, you know, there comes in elves and and the idea that Santa Claus has been around as long and actually does maybe go in the entire world in one night. And I'm like, okay, so they're just kind of throwing this all in together, and I'm here for it.
Totally.
Well, it works because they don't really lean too much into the fantastical, and they don't really lean too much into the grounded nature. Like they find a way to really work that just right, kind of almost like I would compare the tone of this movie and the way that it embraces mythology almost identical to like something like the Dark Knight trilogy, where it's grounded in a reality that's familiar to you, but it still has those fantastical components.
Yeah, I would love to see this become a trilogy, by the way. That would be amazing, because this particular version of Santa is that compelling. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the perfect balance of realism versus fantasy. I mean, it still takes everything that we know about Santa Claus as a character and as an icon of Christmas, and it just brings it back down to earth, and it makes it, something even relatable, I would say.
Yeah, and I think part of that magical nature of Santa Claus has to be kept intact. I think that's fundamental to the icon and to the character. So it actually does make a bit of sense, There's a particular line, but I guess we'll wait until we get more into the spoiler territory. But
Yes, I think it's actually a good call. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with the guys in Collateral Cinema talking spoilers on Fatman.
Fatman.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victimsandvillains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victimsandvillains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today. Welcome back to Victims and Villains, and we are officially riding into the spoiler section for Fatman. So if you guys have not seen it, it is currently streaming right now for rent on all major digital platforms and VOD as well. So we all highly recommend you guys go checking it out, but hit pause on this and then go support Saban and then come back and check this out, because this is actually an independent film, and we support independent film here at Victims and Villains. But let's kind of pick it up where we were talking about before the commercial break. Ash, what was the one line that you were going to kind of use to continue the conversation?
Okay, so there's this scene where we've got the government, or the military, the military coming in and doing their operation and taking over Santa's workshop, and they're talking with the elves. And the elves, and they're asking, how do you survive on just sweets? And they explain it in a way that's just kind of matter of fact, like, oh yeah, we eat sweets and it keeps our energy up, and we take naps every 8 hours and blah, blah, blah. And then, he goes, well, does Kris-Kringle, Santa Claus, do the same thing? And then they go, no, he stays young by all the giving.
And look how old he looks. So that should be really telling of the problems that they're facing.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
I would also like to see them kind of explain and kind of like flesh out like the mythology behind Santa, because like we said like so far in this podcast is like the Santa in this universe, like he is the familiar figure, like we all know him. And I love the scene between him and Mrs. Claus where he's like talking about like how Christmas is like this $3 trillion a year industry, and they can't even afford to pay their lights on. Like they should have gotten rights for like likeness and stuff like that to use and profited that way. And she's like, oh, that's not who we are. But I would like to kind of see, because he's kind of like almost immortal. Like, I mean, he gets shot twice on Christmas Eve. He gets stabbed twice in the end of the movie, and then gets shot through the eye and still lives.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's done so like point blank, they just shoot him in the face. And at first I kind of freaked out. I was like, whoa, it's just unceremonious like that. Is that what this kind of movie is? And then I was like, nah, he'll probably come back. And he does. But
yeah, in my notes for that particular scene, it was just simply Hitman just killed Santa. What the hell? I mean, that was a great turn, I think, but I kind of figured that he would be all right, because it's very heavily implied that he is an immortal supernatural figure, even with like supernatural strength almost. Like there's that scene where he gets those crates and tips them over by himself, and 2 soldiers couldn't do it. So it's implied that the supernatural elements of his character is what's keeping him alive, and that more than likely it's going to take more than just a couple of gunshots or stabs in the back to take him down.
It's the giving, Bo. It's the giving.
Yeah, it's the giving. Exactly. That's what keeps him alive.
I love how ambiguous they leave that, though. Like, I do really want to kind of see what creative essence they could do to flesh him out. Mm-hmm. But if I'm being honest, I really just want more Mel Gibson as Santa Claus.
Yes.
No, I know what happened. He took out Santa Claus one night, and the Santa Claus kicked in, and he turned into Santa Claus. You know what I mean? That's what happened. It happened to Mel Gibson instead of Tim Allen.
And it's funny because
that's the universe
this is in. Go ahead. They mentioned it at one point too, as he goes, well, this we haven't had this since, and he asked the elf, and they're like, since 1910, and you're like, oh, okay, so he probably is immortal. He has been living that long. And it's funny how those elements are just thrown in, and it's kind of like, and they're thrown in because these are things that we just come to accept about Santa in pop culture, but at the same time, or in just culture in general, but at the same time, we're not sure what to think because we're watching this new rendition of it. So we're kind of surprised when we see something like that pop up.
Yeah, I think also, too, one of the things that makes Santa such a compelling character, is I feel wrong. We're just going to call him Chris.
Yeah.
Because he's Chris-Cringle. And I think one of the things that make him such a grounded character and really help also really walk that line between fantastical and realism so well is the relationship that he has between Mrs. Claus, Ruthie, in this, who's played marvelously by Marianne Jean Baptiste. I probably said that name completely wrong, and if you happen to hear this,
Marie, isn't it Marie Jean Baptiste or something like that?
I think it'd be like Jean Baptiste or something.
You guys are probably right.
Yeah. Oh man, that was actually my favorite part of the entire movie was the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Kringle.
They had a lot of good chemistry. Yeah,
great chemistry together on screen, and and she was just such a loving and endearing character. I mean, she really uplifted everyone in every scene that she was in.
I like how, in the same way that they toe the line between fantasy and realism, they toe the line between him being a wholesome, grandfatherly figure and this hard ass. He talks to strangers and convinces them not to do things that they shouldn't do, like telling the guy, in the bar, hey, go home to your family. But at the same time, he drinks all the time.
He drinks, and also he's totally into guns. He's American Santa all the way, like straight up. I mean, one of the first scenes that we see him in, he's shooting a bunch of cans and Christmas tins, which was a good little touch right there.
Which it's almost like if someone mixed Santa Claus with your dad, Bo.
Oh no! Oh no! Less said about that, the better.
I'm pretty sure that though that's like our actual introduction to him, because we get introduced to Billy first. We get introduced to Jonathan Miller, who's Skinny Man, aka Walter Goggins, and then we get introduced to Santa Claus. And I love like how that's like such a that part of him almost kind of seems like second thought the more that the movie goes on, and then they bookend that so well with the just super intimidating ending here, where he's basically like, I'll give you, basically goes to Billy and says, I'm going to give you coal for the rest of your life, and like there's nowhere you can go that I can't find you, basically.
Yeah. Oh man, I just love the menace in Mel Gibson's performance there, and also in Marie Jean Baptiste's performance. I mean, she comes in, is like, hey, this is Chris-Cringle. It's like, and she's just right there, and she just allows Chris to just say what he needs to say. And I mean, can we talk a little bit about Billy, because oh my god, fuck that little kid. I mean,
I like how
I thought that fat kid from Riccio was fucking horrible.
I thought about that too.
This kid was terrible. Oh my lord. I mean, and he is exactly the kind of kid that would absolutely put out a hit on Santa. He's putting out hits on everybody. Even one of his classmates that bested him at a science fair. It's like, kid, you're taking this shit way too fucking far.
It's funny that you thought of the little kid from Riccio, because I did too. And I was like, I don't know. Is this kid worse? I love how Walter Goggins' character has the kid's name and saved in his phone as little shit.
Little shit, exactly. Oh, he just straight up calls him a little prick and everything as well. I mean, yeah, he does not like Billy at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us did. And it's weird. So like his character was actually supposed to have more screen time than what he actually has. And for those of you guys that have rented the Blu-ray, there are like deleted scenes on there, and like 90% of those deleted scenes are all with him.
Oh, wow.
And he's like just a like, you hate him in this movie, but like the deleted scenes explore like just how shady of a cat he really is.
Oh man, I didn't get a chance
weird.
to look at those. I didn't get a chance to see any of that. I mean, I will say that the actor is really, really great at playing a sociopath. I mean, he's almost like he's in control like all the time, except for that one moment when Chris finally finds him. I mean, and also, I mean, he was about like 5 seconds away from killing his grandma because he was
Can we talk about that, please?
Yes. What the fuck, man? He was about to straight kill his grandma. All because he was about to find out about his laundering money from her, or embezzling money from her.
And like that scene again, like just proves the immortality of Chris-Cringle in this movie. He's like, yep,
yeah,
fentanyl, that'll do it. And like, I mean, that kid put so much in there, and it's like, dude, like your grandma, there's like helpless, and he's basically like running the show at this like mansion, like hiring and firing like the help as he like deems fit, hiring a hitman. Like, this is like the worst kind of kid that you could be raising right now.
Well, I mean, what parents are raising him? We don't ever see his parents in the entire movie.
That's set up in the very first scene. I do like that exposition there because, and it's done pretty subtly, but you get the picture, absent father. I don't even think we heard about the mother at all.
No, not at all.
But, so we get the idea that here's this kid who's basically left to his own devices. So, I mean, I guess there's kind of an exploration of mental health just in that character.
So, and you kind of also see later in the movie that there's what kind of relationship that they actually have. And so I'm going to share this really embarrassing story about myself.
Go for it.
So when I was growing up, I was like, you know how you go through like phases as a kid where you're like, it's like I'm really into Power Rangers, but now I'm like really into like model cars.
Oh yeah.
So like I had this like phase of my life where like I was like really like heavily into like, I want to say it was like music or something like dealing with like creative arts that I'm not really too much into now, but we had I think it was my grandmother, one of my grandmothers that we really didn't see all that much. She like always like I was out of that phase of my life, and like that was the only thing that she kept giving me. And I was like, I mean, her heart's in the right place, but there's a scene in this movie where Billy gets a Christmas gift from his father, and he opens it up, and it's like this like giant teddy bear, which for the audience that you know has met and known this kid knows that like he's not the teddy bear kind of kid. Like the first moment that we meet him is him doing something at his desk, and he has a Napoleon Bonaparte like painting behind him. So you honestly know that like this is a very smart kid. Like he likes like dictators throughout history, and you know that really much establishes that you know you are trying to kind of preserve or like don't really even know your kid. And so as a means of kind of like I would almost kind of say like mental health crisis, like what Ash was saying, you know, this kid is kind of going and doing things that could actually be, you know, crying out for help because he doesn't actually have any of that support system or that stability at home.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all kind of laid bare for you just in the subtext. And it's not even explored profoundly, but I like how this movie just kind of leaves it there. And we've also got the psyche of Mel Gibson's character, Chris-Cringle, as well, you know? And him kind of having to deal with the changing climate of the world and being a wholesome, giving person by nature, but almost feeling taken advantage of and having to deal with that.
I would say that for his character, it feels less about the nature of, you know, kind of being a traditionalist in like this ever-growing world, but there's a line where there's like a newscaster or something on the TV. It's a throwaway line, and it says, "Is Santa really even making a difference anymore?" And it's like, you know, here you have this character that was iconic and beloved at one point in his life, and like, you know, like you were saying, like Ash, like he does feel like he is taken advantage of. And it's interesting to explore kind of like as the world continues to grow more cynical and more dark around him, how that begins to affect his mental health. And it's like, you know, that feeling of trying to meet everyone's standards is draining. And
Yeah,
you know,
is.
trying to meet and make everyone happy, like, I mean, it takes a massive toll on your mental health, and sometimes you just have to be able to take things for yourself. And that's where I kind of think the nature of the relationship with Ruthie comes into play, and kind of allows them to have a healthy mental health and stay stable in the healthier portion of mental health than just kind of continuously going to drown his sorrows in eggnog and beer.
Yeah, because she grounds him and she sets him straight, you know, as your partner should do, because he's starting to question himself, and he's thinking, you know, if I'm going out of my way to do this and spread joy and I'm just being taken advantage of, we can't even pay the bills. He even says that at one point, you know, she goes, "That's not us," but he's like, "That's them. And that's the way that they act." And, you know, do we have to act this way? Do we have to be this way because we're just getting taken advantage of? And that can be, like you said, extremely draining when you feel like you're doing the right thing, but you're not getting the results out of it. And you feel like being a good person is just not even worth it.
Well, I mean, it speaks to how support systems really, help people in regards to their mental health. I mean, and she's one hell of a support system, and she's just one person, she's his rock. And she's constantly pulling him out of those more transgressive elements of his personality. So, I mean, I think that, it really speaks to how, we all need those types of systems. We all need people there to, help bring us up, to be uplifting, and to be there whenever we are having those types of mental health crises.
You have to have that person that keeps you honest, Yeah.
Yeah.
That clause dynamic that Ruthie and Chris have really kind of proves that one person can make a difference, because when we first meet Santa in this movie, he's just in a dark place, like we talked about him, like he's just shooting Christmas bins. And so he kind of almost has like this like cynical, almost really sinister hatred towards the holiday of Christmas. And as the movie progresses, like, he's worrying about, what to do about, finances and keeping the lights on and making sure that the elves are, being paid, and the just the darkness that that exists in some of his scenes and some of his lines, and then just kind of met with that brightness that Ruthie brings and that realism. That's one of the things that I've talked about on the show I love about being married is having my wife able to really calm me down when I'm feeling like anxious or vice versa, and just having that person that you can just run to and talk to. And it doesn't have to be a spouse, like it can be like a best friend, or someone that you podcast with, or you play Words with Friends, or something like that. So
I relate to that a lot, because I also someone that's married. Obviously, I have that in my significant other, but I also have that in other relationships in my life with my friends. And you keep those people close to you, the people that uplift you and remind you of the person that they fell in love with, or the person that they like and like to spend time with. And that helps you continue to be that person, because we all lose our path from time to time. It's easy to lose your way in the world.
Now, I can't really say that I relate to the marriage part, but being a single person, I mean, I tend to surround myself with people that I know I can rely on to lift me up whenever I'm down like that. I try to keep positive people in my life.
You got me, bro.
Toxicity. Yeah, of course, man.
And you got everyone at Victims and Villains too. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that's kind of the perspective I come from, I mean, in the end, the friends are the family that you choose, and, I have a pretty big extended family, and they're there for me, and, that's my system of support. So
I think you and I are alike in a lot of those ways. I feel like our inner circle is pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much just you and Robert and my co-hosts on the Collateral Gaming side as well, and my brother and my wife, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. You just need a few people in your life to just keep you straight. And with Chris, he's got his wife, and I think she exemplifies all the powerful, positive aspects of a relationship that's healthy and keeps you growing.
And she's also the most indicative of the Christmas spirit a little bit as well. She kind of embodies
very much so.
Yeah.
And I also too want to stress this too, that while we always talk about how important community is here, one of the things that I think sometimes when people are going through a mental health crisis is failing to oversee the fact that it matters who you surround yourself with. Because I don't know if there's a saying to back it up, but I know that a lot of times, like, the mental health mood of a room can kind of be like brought down by like anger or like sadness. So if you're like constantly surrounding yourself in that environment, then you're doing absolutely a more danger to your own mental health than you are doing a positive to it. And so that's why when we're talking about like marriages and like the friends we surround ourselves with and the relationship between Chris and Ruthie, all of those are positive influences. And sometimes it takes a long time it takes a couple tries, honestly, to kind of make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. And I've lost many good friends over the years because they just weren't good for my mental health. And the people that I'm constantly talking to on a daily basis make my mental health situation so much better.
Yeah, you are who you surround yourself with. And I've had my share of people that I considered my best friend that I just realized were not in the same path. And the more I spent time around them, the more I was dragging myself down.
Yeah.
So, I think it's very important to evaluate the relationships that you have in your life and be with who makes you better and be with the people that you have a positive influences on as well, because you might be that person to someone else.
No, that's good, Ash. And just always like being prepared to, because you never know the kind of influence that you have over others. And we always kind of talk about like how important it is to have self-care for mental health, but also equally as important is to make sure that you're also considering the mental health of others around you.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's another mental health story arc that we kind of see throughout the course of this. And before we get into talking about his mental health journey, though, I think it's important we talk about Walter Goggins.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
He's a catalyst for most of the events of the movie. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and what's funny is his character almost seems similar to the same character he plays in Ant-Man and the Wasp. At least I saw aspects of that.
Really? I would almost kind of compare his character in this one to like Tomb Raider a little bit more.
Okay.
Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I remember him in
yeah.
Tomb Raider as well. Which, by the way, I appreciate that movie for what it is, but like most video game movie adaptations, I do wish it was more like the video game that it was based off of, because that particular game was phenomenal. And we did an episode on the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot on Collateral Gaming. There we go. I just plugged it in there.
Nice.
But so Jonathan Miller is played by Walter Goggins, is this hitman for hire, and he's got this like weird strange obsession with collecting made in Santa's workshop memorabilia that people get on Christmas. He even is it an airplane that he buys off of like a 5-year-old at a gas station?
$150. Straight up $150.
Yeah, and like the next thing you just kind of see, and then he's got this like weird hamster, which I have to say that him in the pet shop has to be one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because it's almost like his hamster's kind of his support animal a little bit.
Yeah.
And he definitely tries to take care of it, but and that's why he didn't take that bull crap from that pet shop owner. He was just like, look, lady, you don't know me, so shut the fuck up.
What was up with that scene, though? Like, she was very intrusive.
She was so insistent on trying to figure out what type of animal he really liked. And he's just like, no, lady.
Looking at that in retrospect, that is kind of an odd scene that played out for a little while. And it's kind of like one of those scenes from The Room where you're like, what did that have to do with anything? But I guess it served a part. It just in demonstrating his character. But it is kind of odd thinking about it now.
Going back to our Black Lives Matter episodes, and kind of like talking about some of like the history of like racism and like profiling, I'm pretty sure that lady was just profiling him because he was in all black. It's just like, oh, this guy looks gothic. He must be a reptiles guy. Like 90% of my wardrobe is like all black, and I hate reptiles. So, like, don't ever try to sell me a snake, or a iguana, maybe a bearded dragon. Let's just leave it at that. But
yeah, my brother had a ball python and some Pac-Man frogs for a little while when he was younger. He also had a tarantula, and he never wore black. So
yeah, I don't know. Like, that scene's like really weird, but I really enjoyed it, and I love the fact that he gets emotional in that scene, and it's kind of just not expected. It's not really expected from his character because his character is very stoic throughout up to that point, and he's just like, snakes eat hamsters. Yeah. And you can tell that like he's like very offended by the fact that this lady just tried to offer him a snake. And I think, Bo, to kind of go back to what you're talking about, that the fact that this hamster is kind of almost a support system for him.
Yeah.
And you find out that in the end of the movie, during the final showdown between him and Nell, that he actually ended up like losing his parents at a young age, and like he was an orphan because of it, and like it kind of almost seems like maybe the hamster was kind of almost a connection to something a little bit simpler, like a more nostalgic exercise for him in his life. And I think that might even be what fuels his fascination with collecting Santa's workshop memorabilia as well.
Yeah, he's trying to regain something that he lost back in the day, and of course that's his innocence, and that's his. And you get that in the final battle when Chris says, "It's like, look, I couldn't bring back your parents." It's like it's obvious that's what he asked for. He wanted his parents back, and Santa just couldn't do that for him, and that just messed him up so badly.
I like what you. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I like what you said, Josh, about the about how his emotions started showing in that scene, and then throughout the rest of the movie, he sort of becomes unhinged, right?
The closer and closer that he gets to Chris.
Yeah.
I think he has some of my favorite scenes in this movie. I just want to throw that out there. I love the scene too where he's like knowing that he's going to be going to the North Pole, so he stops at I guess it's like Dick's Sporting Goods for like cold weather.
Yeah.
And he's just like going through like all of like the like, I hate green, plaid, gross, this one makes me look fat, and like just how he has a comment for everything. And so he finally just is like, I'll just take this white one over here, and he's like, I can see you're a man of good taste.
Yeah, and he walks out with quite a bit of product as well. I mean, he goes on a little spending spree there.
Oh yeah. And he's also it's kind of alluded to that, you know, he's also a man of order. His apartment is very perfectly balanced. Everything's in order. There's not a hint of chaos throughout it. And I think also I would kind of want to get your guys' opinion. Do you guys think that also kind of stems from the childhood trauma of losing his parents? You know, here's an event where you just kind of feel absolutely helpless. So if you have everything in order, you're gonna bring, you can actually have control over that.
Well, yeah, I think that kind of goes without saying. I mean, it's very much an obsessive compulsive kind of thing, and those type of things can kind of manifest due to certain types of traumas, you know, or as far as I know. I mean, I'm not a mental health expert or anything, but I mean, I think that's an apt description of what drives him to be so orderly, and it also kind of informs the more menacing aspects of his personality. I mean, he is like cold as ice in so many scenes, like the scene with that girl Christine. That was her name, Christy.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, man. Like, yeah, she's just terrified.
And Christine, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas with that menacing look on his face. It's just like, oh wow, chill.
Yeah, that was actually kind of intimidating. I was watching that scene and I'm getting a feel for the character, and I just thought it was odd the way that he almost showed a little sympathy for her.
He does have some sympathy for her, honestly, because he knows that Billy is such a little piece of crap, and he knows that it's such a petty thing that he's doing.
Such a little
So,
turd.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I think that he knows is like, look, I get it. This kid's a little prick. I mean, but I have to do this. He pays me to do this.
I would also like to know kind of how their relationship started.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Like, how did this?
How does a
kid's like-
12-year-old know a
Yeah.
hitman?
yeah, he couldn't be any more than 12 years old. How the hell did he get a hold of a hitman? Like, I mean, obviously a very professional hitman who's been doing this for a while. He's pretty much the archetype of a hitman. Like, even going back to something like Leon the Professional and everything.
You know,
He's
he murders
archetypal.
literally everyone. Like every single scene he comes in, even after he's gotten what he needed out of them, and there's really no reason to kill them, he just shoots them in the back, like
almost like an Anton Chigurh kind of thing. You know.
But again, I'm going back to the fact that, you know, if those people get out and say something, that is going to bring chaos. So by killing them, he is kind of taking control of the situation, says that this is something that I can have control and dominance over. I would even argue that that's the reason why he became a hitman, because it stemmed from the trauma of what he experienced as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like, you know, if I can't have my parents, then I'm just going to take life away, period. You know, something along those lines, maybe.
I think there was like, so there's this, let me phrase that. There's this scene in the end when the final showdown culminates between Chris and Jonathan that Chris calls him out. He's like, Jonathan Miller, you know, you've been one naughty boy. And he's like, you know, there are limits to my power. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he drops the bomb, you know, I couldn't bring your parents back. And it kind of almost seems like that moment right there is kind of where he has all of this violent rage towards Santa the same way that Billy does. So if he can't get to Santa, what he's going to do is he's going to redirect that violence elsewhere, because that's eventually what ends up happening to anyone if you have mental health issues where you have a lot of bitterness, unforgiveness, and just anger and violence. That has to go somewhere. And so for Jonathan, he ends up putting it into a career into being a hitman.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle to look at it.
And I would also wanted to say, like, with his mental health arc isn't revealed until the end, but it is that he has experienced and undergone this tragic event like we've just been talking about, but also at the same time, like, he never really found peace. He never really found a way to grieve that way. And so he's turned to violence as a way to cope. And another pop culture icon to look forward to that has also experienced something like that would be the evolution of Bruce Wayne to Batman, where here you have a kid that experienced a murder firsthand of his parents, blames him, goes a large portion of his life blaming himself, which, you know, Jonathan also could have done, and dedicated his entire life to taking back the pain that he created so that no one else would ever have to feel it. He's mastering that pain in essence so that no one else has to feel it. He's going to take it all on himself, whereas Jonathan is kind of doing the opposite. He is letting that pain grow, thrive, and evolve until eventually he can make a career out of it to kind of regain order of the chaos that one event caused him the rest of his life.
Yeah, almost kind of a parallel with Billy from Silent Night, Deadly Night, right? I mean, you could argue that he has the same motive.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, you know?
I mean, yeah, like Billy, it kind of is that archetype, like you, again, like I said in your guys' show, like you either live long enough to see yourself become the villain or you die the hero.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So in terms of Christmas movies, I liked that you guys did this on your show, so I want to bring it to my show. Where would this movie kind of rank for you guys? Is this a movie worth revisiting in a year or so? Does this meet your rotation requirements?
Definitely. I mean, I have my own little traditions when it comes to watching certain things during the holidays. Like, I do like to watch some Christmas horror movies. I mean, another thing I like to do on YouTube is I like to go through all the Angry Video Game Nerd episodes around Christmas time. That's kind of a personal little thing I do. But, I mean, this movie is definitely something I could see watching next year. I mean, it's even good enough to kind of stand on its own outside of Christmas, I think. You know, maybe almost on the same level as Die Hard, but not quite. You know?
Yeah, I would definitely revisit this. This is definitely a movie I think that, I'll go ahead and I'll be checking out next year, and I think it could become a part of the rotation along with, Elf or A Christmas Story.
Christmas Story. Oh, man. That's a great movie.
So my wife actually, like I said earlier in this episode, did not actually like movies normally like this. And basically after this movie ended, she was like, can we buy this? And so we're looking into making this a part of our collection and regular rotation. We typically kind of like, is like our traditions is like we have stuff like Elf and It's a Wonderful Life are kind of like staples in our home, and now Fatman, which is such a weird movie to add into that rotation, but it works on so many different levels.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. It really brings in the Christmas spirit, but at the same time being distinctive.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of Victims and Villains. And I just want to wish you guys happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, wherever you guys are celebrating this year. We're going to be taking Christmas off this year, so we are not going to have – this is our Christmas episode. We're going to be back in a week to discuss Hellraiser and the movies of mental health that have gotten us through 2020. Let me do that one more time.
Okay.
That's going to actually do it for us on this episode of Victims and Villains. This has been our Christmas episode. So we want to wish you guys a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you guys celebrate. Happy Hanukkahs. We hope it is filled with cheer and joy and family, and that you guys are just making the best of this year. We will not be back this Friday with a brand new episode, but we will be back next Friday talking about the movie that you guys picked for this month, which is Hellraiser. We're also going to be looking at movies that helped our mental health throughout 2020, and that was a extremely fun episode to record, so I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But where can people find Collateral Cinema and Collateral Gaming?
You can find Collateral Cinema on Apple Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Chill Lover Radio. You can find us on YouTube. We are going to try to get some of the episodes that are missing on there back up and everything, so be patient with us there. You can find us on Patreon, of course. We have 2 tiers. One starts at $1. The other one starts at $5. We have full feature-length commentaries there, and we will have more content there very soon. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Podchaser. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review. That'll help us move up in the charts. And, yeah, check out our next episode, which we're going to take our Christmas break as well. We're probably going to take an end-of-year break. And then we'll be back with our we're going to have Shocked and Applaud on the show. And we're going to talk about Mulholland Drive, the David Lynch movie. And that's going to be really, really interesting. So stay tuned for that and check out our current episode. It is on Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, ditto on the Collateral Gaming side. Everywhere you can listen to Collateral Cinema, you can also listen to Collateral Gaming. On the Collateral Cinema side, be sure to check out our holiday special, which we did with Captain Nostalgia on Silent Night, Deadly Night. We just recorded that a few days ago, so it was a blast having you on, man. And we hope to collab in the future. With Collateral Gaming, we're going to be having our holiday special on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and shortly before that, we'll be talking about Skyrim as our anniversary special, and then we'll be holding off until January.
Christmas collaborations in the making, traditions with this episode and Silent
Hell
Night,
yeah.
Deadly Night. It's coming 2021, 2022, and so
Hell
on and
yeah.
so forth.
Yeah,
You know what?
looking
I
forward to
cannot
it, man.
wait long enough for this year to be over. I like what you said about movies that helped us through 2020, because, man, we needed it.
Oh, no kidding, man. Tell me about it.
Well, you guys can hear what helped our mental health throughout this year next Tuesday. And I just want to wish you guys a happy holiday, and remember to bring me his coat.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Happy holidays to you and yours.